Let's look at an overview of the NEC. The New Engineering Contract, NEC, is a division of Thomas Telford Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Institute of Civil Engineers. The ICE is the owner and developer of the suite of the NEC. The NEC is a suite of standard form construction contracts, each of which has their own following characteristics. Their use is intended to stimulate good management of the relationship between the two parties to the contract and of the work included in the contract. For example, in each of the NEC contracts, there is an obligation on the parties to act in a spirit of mutual trust and cooperation. They are intended to be used in a wide variety of commercial situations, for a wide variety of types of work, and in any location. And they are intended to be clear and simple documents, using language and structure which is straightforward and easily understood. The NEC suite of contracts can be used on private and public sector projects, including civil engineering, general commercial construction, nuclear, utilities, infrastructure, facilities management, oil and gas, and purchasing and supply. They are also intended for global application and are being adopted by many multidisciplinary projects by clients in nearly 20 countries, for example, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. The NEC suite of contracts have also received endorsement from a number of government and industry bodies in the UK and internationally. This included an endorsement from the Construction Clients Board of the UK Cabinet, of which ICE recommended the NEC for use on all public sector commercial construction projects. Therefore, when working on public sector construction projects, there may be little or no choice regarding which form of construction contract to use. The first edition of the NEC was published in 1993, the second NEC2 in 1995, and the third NEC3 in 2005. The fourth and current edition of the NEC was released in June 2017. Throughout these editions, the number of documents within the NEC suite grew. The latest version of the NEC documents were published in June 2017 and now extend to 39 documents, including a how-to guide series. The NEC contracts are also supplemented by a comprehensive website, www.neccontract.com. Guidance notes and flowcharts, various public events, user groups and training courses are available there. The NEC4 suite evolves out of the NEC3 and has been specifically designed to support innovation through digital advances and encourage collaboration across the world. Delivering real project value and enabling best practices in procurement, NEC4 recognises the need for contract administration, terminology and risk management to evolve. It is hoped that this will enable all disciplines across a flexible industry to procure, manage and deliver truly collaborative projects. The style of the NEC3 contracts is noticeably different to most other standard form contracts. The contracts are relatively short when compared to other standard form contracts, involves less text, are written in the present tense, have short sentences, use bullet points, and contain no cross-referencing between clauses. The same structure and same definitions are used as far as possible across the suite of contracts. The intention is for everybody in the construction industry to be able to understand and use these contracts, not just the lawyers. In contrast to other standard form construction contracts, the NEC contracts are structured in a modular format, with different contract options being selected to suit the needs for the particular project. Therefore, each contract contains a set of core clauses that always apply. These are then supplemented by a series of main options relating to payment, dispute resolution options, and secondary options. For example, relating to delay damages, bonds and guarantees, which the parties can choose to apply depending on the needs of the particular project. The philosophy of the NEC contracts is also quite different to other mainstream construction contracts. For example, a feature of the NEC is their focus on good project management. There are various aspects to this. The contracts are more than a statement of rights, obligations and sanctions. They go further than any other form in trying to encourage a successful project outcome. This can be seen in the emphasis on communications, programming, cooperation between the parties, the early identification of matters which may prejudice the successful outcome of the project, early warning, and the early resolution of contractors' claims, compensation events, based on forecast effect rather than a retrospective examination of what actually happened. Dealing with matters on a project basis means there's no final account type process of the kind in other forms. The programme is a key document in an NEC contract. It is crucial to administering the contract and requires constant updating and is backed up with sanctions if it is not provided and or updated. This means that aspects of the NEC contracts are time-consuming to administer, in particular the programming and compensation event provisions, which may make the NEC contracts less appropriate for smaller projects. In further contrast to other standard form construction contracts, whose various suites of contracts have been developed for use with specific procurement routes, the NEC 3 contracts have been developed for use in three broad areas: the procurement of works, the procurement of services, and the supply of goods and services. The appropriate contractual options are then chosen to make the contract work with the desired procurement and payment routes. As the NEC is still the most important and most widely used in this module, I will be discussing the NEC 3. In future releases and as when new information becomes available, I will cover more of the NEC 4. The contracts contained in the NEC 3 suite of documents are as follows: the engineering and construction contract, the engineering and construction short contract, engineering and construction subcontract, the engineering and construction short subcontract, the framework contract, the term services contract, term services short contract, professional services contract, supply contract, supply short contract, adjudications contract, and the NEC and construction contract, ECC, is the most frequently used and can be adopted on projects such as infrastructure, buildings, highways, processes, plants. It is used for the appointment of a contractor for engineering and construction of work, including any level of design responsibility. The ECC, engineering and construction contract, PSC, professional services contract, and TSC, term service contract, offers a range of options. You've got option A, price contract with activity schedule. Option B, price contract with bill of quantities. Option C, target contract with activity schedules. Option D, target contract with bill of quantities. Option E, cost reimbursable contract. Option F, management contract. Option G, terms contract, for the appointment of a consultant based on a price schedule of tasks. Each contract is supported by guidance notes and flowcharts describing the procedures to be followed. Let's have a look at some of the contract documents. The contract documents under the NEC comprises of the form of agreement, conditions of the contract data, which has the setting out information needed to operate the contract and identify the documents which contain the works information. You've got prices, activities, schedules, and bill of quantities. You've got the works information, which describes what is to be done on the site. You've got site information, which describes the condition of the site before the work starts. So those six. Let's now have a look at the operation side of the NEC. Most NEC 3 contracts have 9 core clauses. These are general terms, contractor's main responsibilities, time, testing and defects, payment, compensation events, title, risk and insurance, and termination. Using NEC 3 requires that all parties enter into a contract with a collaborative mindset and that the procedures and terminologies are properly understood and adhered to. If parties have not used the NEC before, great care must be taken to recognise that the terminology and key terms may be different to other forms of contract, with differences ranging from the fact that a contract administrator is replaced by a project manager, through to new terms such as compensation events and a range of new procedures. The above point means that the training is very important prerequisite for a successful NEC contract, particularly when a project team is not familiar with the NEC. This is not just limited to training on what the NEC contract says, but also to how to operate effectively. In addition, use of dedicated NEC 3 contract administration systems, usually cloud-based, and of which there are numerous products on the market, make it much easier to efficiently and correctly administrate the contract. While they produce tangible savings in time, the intangible benefits are high: greater compliance, accountability, and transparency, for example. Lastly, for those used to working in a confrontational environment, the culture change needed to get the best from the NEC needs to be addressed. This includes how hard skills are used, for example, programming and forecasting, as well as soft behavioural issues such as style and negotiation. NEC 3 has been reported as functioning successfully on the London 2012 Olympics, Crossrail, and Heathrow Terminal 5. Let's now have a look at the changes in NEC 4 works contract. NEC 3 has already had a transformative effect on the industry. The adoption of NEC 3 contracts put collaboration and collective risk sharing as the foundation for modern procurement. With high-profile projects being procured under the NEC 3, such as the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympic Games. These contracts have proven that even large, high-risk, complicated projects can be delivered on time and within budget. NEC4 contracts reflect procurement and project management developments and emerging best practice with improvements in flexibility, clarity, and the ease of administration. 2 brand new contracts have been added to the suite: the NEC4 Design, Build and Operate contract, DBO, and NEC4 Alliance contract, ALC. NEC4 is suitable for procuring a full array of works, services, and supply, ranging from major frameworks to small-scale projects. NEC4 is an evolution on the successful NEC3. NEC4 contracts keep on using plain English and present tense to facilitate the celebration of contracts across the world. The new suite of contracts reflect users' feedback, industry developments, and users' best practice. NEC4 contracts have improved contract administration and reduces administrative costs, increased flexibility in each contract and the NEC suite, improved risk opportunity and management, being designed for international use, and better value, greater certainty, and improved delivery. The changes have been designed to support the ongoing drive for further collaboration and integration of project teams, greater use of modern work methods, better avoidance of disputes, and more effective identification and management of risk and opportunity, all of which will help lead to a more successful outcome. There have been key changes to provisions in the ECC, the Engineering and Construction Contract, and the ECS, the Engineering and Construction Subcontract, as follows. Number 1, early warning provisions. The risk register has been renamed the early warning register to distinguish it from the project risk register, often used for wider project management purposes. There are now default periods for early warning meetings. Secondly, programming changes. There are new dividing date provisions similar to those used in compensation events. New provisions provide for treated acceptance of the contractor's program in situations where the project manager does not respond to a program issued by the contractor for acceptance or to a reminder. This is to unlock the impasse which can sometimes occur. Thirdly, standardized terms. Employer becomes the client and the works information becomes scope. There are also some important new provisions in the ECC and ECS to help promote collaborate as follows. Identifying the opportunities. An additional procedure includes the identification of opportunities by either party. These are discussed jointly and the contractor can share in the cost savings of the opportunity that it initiates. Early contractor involvement. This is now included as a secondary option based upon the clauses published by the NEC in 2015. Supporting information modelling. A new secondary option is added specifically to support the use of information models and digital engineering models. This requires a contractor to provide an information model execution plan either for the incorporation in the contract from the outset or within a period defined by the client. Dispute negotiation. A 4-week period for escalation and negotiation of a dispute has been introduced, which takes place prior to commencing any formal proceedings. This requires nominated senior representatives of each party to meet and try to reach a negotiated situation. Dispute avoidance. The works contract now includes a dispute avoidance option, W3, which can be used if the UK Housing Grants Construction Regeneration Act does not apply. This is to refer any dispute to a dispute avoidance board. The benefit of this new option is to encourage and support the parties in resolving any potential dispute and to support users who wish to use this facility on their projects. Financial agreement. For payment applications and final accounts, there are now procedures aimed at reaching agreements on final accounts due. Provisions have been introduced to the cost-based contracts, mainly options C to F, that allow the contractor to instigate a review and acceptance of its defined cost by the project manager upon request. This encourages checking an agreement of defined cost and disallowed cost progressively as the work proceeds, and not to defer the exercise until the project has been completed. Other new and changed provisions in the ECC and ECS include the following. Collaboration. In secondary option X12, partnering has been changed to collaboration, better to reflect the intent. Retention. The secondary option X16 for retention now includes the optional provision of a retention bond instead of having money retained. Confidentiality. A new core clause deals with confidentiality, restricting the disclosure of project information. Communication. The use of communication systems, including an electric one, are now recognised through amended clause 13.2 and, if required, is defined in the scope. Quality. Section 4, Quality Management Provisions, introduce a requirement for the contractor to prepare and issue a quality management system and a plan. Schedules of cost components. Some changes have been made to simplify the schedules of cost components and associated contract data inputs. The schedule of cost components is used only for main options C, D, and E, as the shorter schedule of cost components have been removed from these contracts. The shorter schedule is now used exclusively in options A and B and only to assess compensation events. It adopts a pre-priced approach for people cost to replace the previous cost-based approach. Finally, fee percentage. There is now only one fee percentage, with no separate fee percentage for subcontracted works. The application of the fee to defined cost is consistent across all main options. We are now going to have a look at the three areas of the NEC: contracts for procurement of works, contracts for procurement of services, and contracts for the supply of goods and services. Firstly, the contracts for the procurement of works. The flagship contract in the NEC suite is the Engineering and Construction Contract, the ECC. This is the contract for use where an employer wishes to appoint a contractor to carry out the engineering and construction works. As noted previously, the ECC is structured in a modular format. There are 9 core clauses, for example, dealing with the contractor's main responsibilities, time, the payment process, and compensation events, that will always apply to the contract. The parties then choose one of 6 main options, A to F. The main options allow the employer different ways of pricing the project and different ways of paying the contractor. The main options do not change the remainder of the ECC's provisions, except to deal with the pricing and payment, but they are more than a set of payment schedules. The main option clauses are as follows. You've got option A, which is a price contract with activity schedules. Option B, which is the price contract with bill of quantities. Option C, which is the target contract with activity schedule. Option D is the target contract with the bill of quantities. Option E is the cost reimbursable contract. And option F is the management contract. Options A to E descend in terms of certainty of price for the employer, reflecting similarly descending certainty of work scope. Each option provides merely a different type of pricing basis, from lump sum, option A, high risk to the contractor, to reimbursable, option E, which is low risk to the contractor. Options C and D are target cost contracts. They contain a pain share, gain share arrangement so that the employer and contractor share any cost savings or overspend. Option F, which is the management contract, does not differentiate between the construction management and management contracting procurement routes. It is perhaps suitable for contracts with a higher degree of specialist contractor input. Specialist contractors are paid on the basis of prime cost and the contractor tenders preliminaries and fee percentage. Following the selection of the main options, the parties will select the dispute resolution option, either W1 or W2. Option W2 must be chosen if the contract is governed by the UK Housing Grants Construction Regeneration Act. The parties can then select a number of secondary option clauses to apply to the contract. Again, if the contract will take place in the UK, there are certain secondary options, for example, YUK2 and YUK3, that should be chosen. The parties can also opt to amend the ECC and import additional clauses through the use of option Z. This modular format means that the ECC is drafted on a jurisdiction-neutral basis and so can be used either in the UK or internationally. If the ECC is being drafted internationally, option Z can be used to import any jurisdiction-specific requirements, and the NEC's website also has sections referring to the use in certain overseas jurisdictions. Because the ECC is structured on a flexible basis, it can also be used regardless of the level of design responsibility that the contractor will have. The contractor's design responsibility will be detailed in one of the contract documents, the works information, that makes up the ECC. The contractor may have little or no responsibility for the design of the works, or could have full responsibility for design. Accompanying the terms and conditions of the ECC are 3 key documents that help make up the ECC. You've got the contract data, the works information, and the site information. The contract data details the project-specific requirements for the contract. For example, a description of the works, the identity of people carrying out various key roles, and the details for commencement and completion of the works. The works information is critical because the contractor is obliged to carry out the works in accordance with the works information. Certain compensation events which entitle the contractor to additional time and/or money are also determined by reference to what is stated in the works information. The works information therefore sets out the detailed requirements for carrying out the works, for example, the details of which parts, if any, of the works the contractor is to design. The site information contains the factual material that concerns a site, boreholes, soil reports, etc. The information is usually provided by the employer. In addition to these documents, there's a schedule of cost components and a shorter schedule of cost components, which help to define certain costs which are paid to the contractor. The employer is infrequently mentioned in the ECC. Instead, the administration of the ECC is generally carried out by a project manager and a supervisor. The project manager acts for this employer, issuing instructions, approving programs, assessing compensation events and payments, etc. The supervisor performs a role that is similar to the clerk of works in the JCT, only more so. The supervisor is particularly prominent in the provisions relating to the defects in the works. Secondly, let's look at the contracts for procurement of services. The two principal contracts produced by the NEC relating to the procurement of services are the Professional Services Contract, the PSC, and the Term Services Contract, the TSC. The Professional Services Contract is used to procure services for a particular project, whereas the Term Service Contract is used to procure services, possibly relating to a number of different projects, over a specific period of time. The PSC can be used to appoint a professional consultant to carry out the role of the project manager or supervisor under the engineering and construction contract, or could be used to appoint a designer, for example an architect or other professional consultants. It follows the modular structure present in all the NEC contracts and has four main options for its pricing mechanism. We've got option A, which is the price contract with activity schedules, option C, the target contract, option E, which is a time-based contract, which is essentially a cost reimbursable contract, option G, which is the term contract. This contains reimbursable and lump sum payment elements for use where the employer wishes to have the right to issue task orders to the consultant during a specific period. Following selection of the main options, there are also a series of dispute resolution clauses, the W clauses, and secondary option clauses, X, Y, and Z, for the parties to select depending on the needs of the particular project and the jurisdiction, for example, the UK, in which the project is taking place. The key document in the PSC is a scope. This specifies and describes the services to be provided and states any constraints on how the consultant provides the services. The TSC can be used to procure a wide variety of services, not just those related specifically to construction. For example, the NEC's Term Service Contract Guidance Notes states that the TSC has been designed for use in a wide variety of situations and is not restricted to the construction. It is essentially a contract for a contractor to provide a service not limited to professional or construction services to an employer. The TSC can be used to procure a wide variety of services, not just those related specifically to construction. For example, the NEC's Term Service Contract Guidance Notes states that the TSC has been designed for use in a wide variety of situations and is not restricted to construction. It is essentially a contract for a contractor to provide a service to an employer. As such, the TSC can not only be used to procure professional consultancy services related to construction, but can also be used to procure services such as landscaping and cleaning, highways maintenance, and housing maintenance and repairs. The three main pricing options to choose from the TSC are as follows. Option A, which is the price contract with price list. Option C, which is the target contract with a price list. Essentially, a cost reimbursable contract with a pay and share, gain share mechanism. And option E, which is the cost reimbursable contract. And that's, as we said, essentially a cost reimbursable contract, but without any pay and gain share mechanism. Following the selection of the main pricing options, there are also a series of dispute resolution clauses, the W clauses, and secondary options, X, Y, and Z, for the parties to select depending on the needs of the particular project and the jurisdiction, for example, the UK, in which the project is taking place. The key document in the TSC is a service information, and the contract is administered by a service manager appointed by the employer. Individual pieces of work are instructed to the contractor via task orders. Thirdly, we've got the contracts for the supply of goods and services. The NEC 3 supply contract is recommended for use in the logic and international procurement of high-value goods and services, including design. Examples provided by the NEC of what can be procured under the subcontract include transformers, turbine rotors, rolling stock, loading bridges, transmission plant, and cable and process plant, together with lower risk goods and associated services such as building materials, simple plant and equipment, stationery, PPE, manufacturing parts, components, and store items. The subcontract can be used at various tiers of the supply chain. The payment and pricing mechanism is fixed. There are no choices, but there are a variety of secondary option clauses to choose. The contract is administered by a supply manager appointed by the purchaser.